In a quiet corner of the bustling planet Arinia, Saran stared out to the crystal-clear glass of the family home. She pressed her hand gently against the cool surface, watching a massive freighter descend to the pale yellow skies. The ship shimmered under the dual suns, a stark contrast to the planet's soft, natural beauty. The deep hum of the landing thrusters reverberated in her chest, causing a chill to run down her spine. "Time to go, daughter." Her father's voice cut through the silence, heavy with regret. Saran didn't turn. "How much did they offer you, father? Is it enough to save our healing center?" Her words were calm, though they hit a storm of emotions. Halen Alara, her father, stepped up beside her. His weathered face, marked by years of struggle, showed his sorrow. "Saran, don't think of it as a sale. This is a marriage arrangement to a man from beyond our world, a trade to settle a debt that we built up." Saran's eyes burned with frustration as she turned toward him, her iridescent skin flashing with anger. "Don't dress this up as something noble. You're handing me off like a commodity," she snapped. Halen winced. The Koran family has been a trusted trade partner for generations. Levon Koran is a well-regarded merchant. He'll treat you with respect. Respect? Saran's voice was a low growl. Am I to become his trophy, his exotic possession? Her father shifted uneasily, but continued. "We have no choice, Saran. The debt your mother left us. Don't bring her into this." Saran interrupted, her voice cracking. Her mother, Lysara, had been the most skilled healer on Arinia, running a sanctuary where anyone in need could be treated without charge. Her passing had left a gap that Halen had struggled to fill, taking out loans in an attempt to expand their practice. But poor investments had crippled them. "I know," Halen said softly, "but we're at the end of the road. Saran, you don't understand what this means for the center, for our home." Saran exhaled, trying to hold back the tears. "I understand all too well, father, but that doesn't make this easier." A gentle knock interrupted the moment. Saran's younger sister, Ira, entered carrying a long, shimmering gown. The silver fabric glowed softly, reflecting the bioluminescence of their skin. "Here, your wedding dress," Ira whispered, her young face filled with sorrow. She was 5 years younger than Saran, too young to witness the sacrifice her sister was making. Saran took the gown, feeling the delicate threads beneath her fingertips. The fabric was embroidered with symbols of unity and harmony, so full of meaning in their culture. The irony stung. "Will you help me get ready?" Saran asked quietly. Ira nodded and led her into the private room. As Ira worked, Saran caught sight of herself in the polished surfaces around her. Her blue skin shimmered with the patterns of her heritage, flowing swirls of glowing turquoise tracing down her arms. Her eyes, deep violet like the dusk of Arinia's evening, looked back at her, filled with uncertainty. Ira worked carefully to arrange Saran's hair, adding the tiny, glowing crystals that only grew in the deepest caves of their planet. "You look beautiful," Ira said quietly, fastening the last crystal into Saran's hair. "Like the stars come alive." Saran's throat tightened, and she took her sister's hand. "I'm doing this for you too, little star, for your future." Ira's eyes shimmered with tears. "I never wanted this. Why does it have to be you?" "Sometimes we don't get to choose our path," Saran replied gently, wiping away Ira's tears. "But we can choose how we walk it." The sound of ceremonial bells echoed through their home, signaling that Levon Koran had arrived. Saran's heart pounded as she made her way to the garden, her footsteps heavy with the weight of what was to come. The garden was filled with bioluminescent plants, their soft glow casting an otherworldly light on the scene. There, waiting beside her father, was Levon Koran. He was taller than she'd imagined, with broad shoulders and an aura of confidence that wasn't arrogant, just steady. His skin was a rich, warm bronze, and his dark hair curled slightly at the temples. When their eyes met, she was surprised to find his gaze was as conflicted as hers, uncertain, even troubled. "Merchant Koran," her father said formally, introducing him. "This is my daughter, Saran Alara, gifted healer and keeper of our people's knowledge." Levon bowed, the motion respectful and traditional, though it surprised Saran. "I am honored to meet you. His voice was deep and resonated in the still air, his accent giving the Iranian language a musical quality. As per tradition, Saran extended her hands, palms up. For a brief moment, Levon hesitated before gently placing his hands over hers. The touch was startling, a warm pulse that spread through her, unexpected but not unpleasant. His skin was warmer than hers, almost unnaturally so. "This bond begins now," the elder intoned, a ceremonial cord of glowing fibers being wrapped around their wrists. What was owed is now settled by this union. Saran fought to maintain her composure, as humiliation gnawed at her. She was being bound to him to pay off a debt. Her gaze flicked up, meeting Levin's, and for a moment she saw something in his expression. Concern, perhaps, or guilt, but before she could read more into it, the ceremony continued, swiftly and without emotion, until it concluded. By both Iranian and human law, she was now his wife. Her father cleared his throat. "Your belongings have already been transferred to Merchant Koran's ship. You will leave within the hour." Saran's chest tightened. "So soon?" she whispered, fighting the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. "If I may," Levon spoke up, his Iranian still careful but more fluid now. "I would like to offer Saran time to say proper farewells. We can depart tomorrow at first light." Halen looked surprised, but nodded. "That's very kind of you." Later, when they were alone in the meditation garden, a custom for newly bonded couples, Saran found her voice again. "You speak Iranian well," she said, keeping her distance. Levon glanced at her, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I've traded with your people for years. It would be foolish not to learn." Saran's eyes narrowed. "Is that all I am to you, business?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Levin's face tightened, but he held his ground. "This arrangement wasn't my choice." "And yet you agreed to it," Saran replied coldly. "You see, Saran," Levon began, his voice low but unwavering, "your father owed a great deal to my family's trading consortium. This arrangement was a solution, not mine." Saran's bioluminescent patterns flared in frustration, the turquoise glow shifting to a deep blue. "And you couldn't refuse such a lucrative deal? An alien healer as your bride." For a moment, she saw something flicker in Levin's emerald eyes. Anger, perhaps, but also something deeper. He paused before answering. "I agree because the alternative was your family losing everything, including your sanctuary. My father was prepared to take everything as collateral." Saran fell silent, her mind spinning with this unexpected honesty. "I don't expect you to believe this," Levon continued more quietly, "but I intend to treat you as my equal, not as property nor payment. You'll have freedom aboard my ship, and I won't ask anything from you that you don't willingly give." Saran was taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. But her years of hearing about humans, about their ambition, their ruthlessness, kept her on edge. "Words are easy," she replied, still guarded. "Actions reveal the truth." To her surprise, a small smile touched Levin's lips. "Ah, an Iranian proverb," he said, his voice softening. "My mother used to say that." Saran blinked, caught off guard. "Your mother knew our sayings?" "She lived here on Irania for 3 years," Levon explained, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "She was a cultural liaison. She adored your world." A shadow passed over his expression as he added, "She passed away last year." The vulnerability in his voice, so unlike the guarded merchant she had imagined, caught Saran off guard. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said quietly, her healer's instinct kicking in. "My mother also returned to the stars 4 years ago." For a brief moment, their shared grief created a fragile bond between them, a brief connection that transcended the vast gulf between their cultures. "Tomorrow morning," Levon said, breaking the silence, "we depart for the horizon's call, my ship. It will be your home, too, if you wish it." Saran's voice was cautious. "Do I have a choice?" Levin's response was cryptic, his words carrying a weight of meaning. "More than you might think," he said enigmatically, bowing in the traditional Iranian manner. "Until tomorrow, Saran Alara Blackwood." As he walked away, Saran remained rooted to the spot in the garden, her gaze shifting to the unfamiliar stars beginning to light the night sky above. Tomorrow, she would leave her home behind and venture into the vast unknown of space, accompanied by a man she barely knew. Fear still gripped her heart, but alongside it, something else flickered. A tiny spark of curiosity about the human with deep green eyes who spoke her language and respected her customs. Perhaps, she thought, as she touched the ceremonial bond still wrapped around her wrist, there was more to Levon Blackwood and their forced union than she had originally believed. The Horizons call was unlike anything Saran had ever seen. From the outside, the ship appeared practical, a sleek hull of burnished metal, designed for utility with powerful engines and modest armaments. But inside, it was a masterpiece of multicultural design. The corridors curved with the elegance of Iranian architecture, while the functional spaces reflected human efficiency. Decorative elements from various worlds adorned the common areas, creating an unexpected harmony. Most trading ships are cold, impersonal, Levon explained as he guided her through the vessel. My father believed the ship should reflect the diversity of the worlds it connects. Saran trailed her fingers along a wall panel carved with symbols from her home planet. Your father designed this? She asked, impressed. Built it with his own hands, Levon replied, pride coloring his voice. He had help from craftspeople across 3 star systems. He believed in bridges, not barriers. As they walked, crew members nodded respectfully or cast curious glances. Most of them were human, but Saran noted at least 4 other species among them, all working together in harmony. This is your quarters, Levon said, stopping in front of an ornate door. It slid open to reveal a spacious room with a large viewport showing the stars. The furniture was a mix of human practicality and Iranian elegance. Curved lines, bioluminescent accents, and materials that reminded Saran of the crystals from her home planet. You prepared all this for me? Saran asked, her voice soft with surprise. Levin's expression remained neutral. I had it redesigned when I learned you would be coming. The environmental controls are also calibrated to Iranian preferences, slightly cooler with higher humidity. Saran moved to the viewport, watching as Irania grew smaller in the distance. Already, she could feel the difference in the artificial gravity, slightly heavier than her planet's gentle pull. Where are your quarters? She asked, suddenly aware they hadn't discussed the more awkward aspect of their arrangement. Adjacent, Levon replied, pointing to a door on the far wall. It's connected, but with privacy locks on both sides. I meant what I said yesterday, he continued. This marriage may have been arranged, but I expect nothing from you that isn't freely given. Relief washed through Saran, making her bioluminescent patterns pulse softly. Thank you. Levon nodded before turning toward the door. We depart for the Meridian trading route in 1 hour, he said. Feel free to explore the ship. You're my wife, not my prisoner. After he left, Saran unpacked her few belongings, healing crystals, medical texts, and personal items. The last thing she removed was a small potted plant, its delicate glowing fronds a gift from Ira. Just looking at it made her throat tighten with homesickness. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Healer Alara Blackwood? A female voice came through the communication system. I'm Dasha Petrov, the ship's physician. Captain Blackwood suggested I introduce myself. Would you like to see our medical bay? The medical bay was more advanced than Saran expected for a trading vessel. Dasha Petrov, a compact woman with short silver hair and sharp eyes, gave Saran a thorough tour, pride evident in her every step. Most merchant ships have basic facilities, Dasha explained, but Levon insists on the best. You help people in distress? Saran asked, examining an unfamiliar analyzer. Whenever we can, Dasha replied. Levon has a reputation for it. Not always good for business, but good for the soul, as we humans say. Dasha paused, watching Saran with a knowing look. Levin's voice was gentle, yet his words carried weight. You're a healer on your world, he said, watching her closely. I was training to become the chief healer at our sanctuary before. Well, before all of this. Saran's voice faltered, trailing off as she remembered her past life, the future she'd been forced to leave behind. Dasha's expression softened as she studied Saran. Before your arrangement, I understand. She began slowly. I've known Levon since he was a boy. His father saved my life during a plague on Centauri Prime. The Blackwoods, they aren't like typical merchants. Saran raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? They believe trade should benefit everyone equally, Dasha explained, her eyes glinting with a hint of respect. Half of the equipment here in the medical bay was obtained through barter with worlds too poor for credits, but rich in knowledge or rare materials. She gestured to the advanced medical instruments around them. Levin's father called it ethical commerce. Before Saran could respond, the ship vibrated gently beneath their feet. We're entering the slipstream, Dasha said, her tone calm but full of experience. It's your first time, right? Saran nodded, suddenly feeling the strange sensation of space folding around them. The ship accelerated beyond normal physics, and she felt a wave of dizziness sweep over her. You might experience some disorientation, Dasha explained. Different species react differently to slipstream travel. True to Dasha's warning, Saran's bioluminescent patterns flickered wildly as her vision blurred at the edges. Perhaps you should sit down, Dasha suggested, guiding her to a chair. I'm fine, Saran insisted, though her knees buckled as another wave of disorientation hit her. Med bay to bridge, Dasha said into her communicator. Captain, your wife is having a reaction to the slipstream. Her physiology isn't handling the transition well. Levin's voice crackled over the speaker immediately. I'll be right there. By the time he arrived, Saran was trembling, her skin's glow pulsing in distressing patterns. What's happening to her? Levon asked, his voice full of concern. Her dual cardiovascular system is struggling with a spatial distortion. Dasha explained as she scanned Saran with a medical device. It's nothing dangerous, but it's extremely uncomfortable. Levon knelt beside her chair, his presence steadying her. Can we help her? To Saran's surprise, he placed his hand over hers gently. The warmth of his touch had a grounding effect, giving her something to focus on other than the disorientation. There's a technique, Saran managed to say through gritted teeth. Astrian healers use it when treating spatial sickness, but I need synchronization. Levon nodded immediately. Tell me what to do. Place your hands on my temples, Saran instructed, closing her eyes. I need to align my heart's rhythms with yours. If Levon found the request unusual, he didn't show it. He positioned his hands carefully, his touch both firm and gentle. Now, breathe with me, Saran instructed, and as their breathing synchronized, Saran extended her healer's senses. It was a natural Astrian ability to feel the rhythm of another's heart. Gradually, she adjusted her dual hearts, creating a harmonic resonance with Levin's. The disorientation began to fade. It's working, Saran whispered, her bioluminescence stabilizing into a steady glow. What she hadn't expected was the subtle, emotional resonance that accompanied the synchronization. While it wasn't the deep bond Astrians could form with their own kind, it was enough for Saran to sense Levin's genuine concern for her well-being. When she opened her eyes, Levon was watching her intently, his expression unreadable. Better? He asked softly. Yes, Saran replied, suddenly aware how close they were, his hand still resting lightly on her temples. Thank you, she added quietly. Levon withdrew his hand slowly. You should rest. The slipstream journey is exhausting for anyone, let alone someone experiencing physiological distress. Saran hesitated, her instinct to help others kicking in. I should stay and help Dr. Petrov organize the medical supplies. That can wait, Dasha insisted from nearby. Captain's orders. Levon stood. I'll escort you back to your quarters. As they walked through the corridors, Saran noticed how Levon shortened his stride to match hers. She also felt a steadying hand at her back when the ship made minor adjustments in the slipstream. Is it always as disorienting? She asked quietly. The first jump is the worst, Levon replied. Your body will adapt. He paused before adding, though, we could arrange for you to be sedated during transitions if it's too uncomfortable. No, Saran said firmly, her voice steady. I won't be unconscious on this journey. I need to understand everything if I'm to adapt to this new life. Levon nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. As you wish. When they reached their quarters, Saran hesitated before entering. The synchronization technique, Levon said, his voice softer now. It sometimes creates a temporary connection. You might experience unusual dreams tonight. Saran raised an eyebrow. What kind of dreams? Echoes of Astrian consciousness, Levon explained. Nothing invasive, just fragments of perception. Saran shifted uncomfortably. Her curiosity piqued. I should have warned you beforehand, but there wasn't time. To her surprise, curiosity, not alarm, showed on Levin's face. I look forward to the experience, he said softly. Rest well, Saran. As the door slid closed behind her, Saran sank onto her bed, exhausted from both the slipstream transition and the unexpected intimacy of the synchronization. She hadn't told Levon the full truth, that the technique was typically reserved for close family members or bonded pairs. It created a temporary bridge between minds, allowing the healer to stabilize the patient. What troubled her was how easily the connection had formed between them, despite their differences. And in that brief moment of shared synchronization, Saran had sensed something unexpected in Levon, a deep loneliness that echoed her own. The next few days followed a new routine. Saran spent her mornings in the medical bay with Dasha, her afternoons exploring the ship or studying in her quarters, and her evenings dining with Levon in a small private galley attached to the captain's quarters. At first, their dinners were formal, filled with discussions about ship operations and trade protocols. But gradually, they began sharing more personal stories. Saran talking about her training as a healer, Levon about his childhood spent between worlds.